Okay, so do you want to just move to public comment now, Dickon, or Art?
Yes.
No, Art had his hand up.
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, I was just going to suggest that we move the item number 11 on the agenda to the present time, which is the public comment.
Do we have a second? Uh,
I'll
Second.
second.
okay. Then any discussion? All in favor of moving item 11 to right now?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
As I have passed.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, so do we have any public comments? Glen Ayers.
Hi, thank you. My name is Glenn Ayers. I live in Greenfield, and I appreciate you having public comments at these meetings. And I'm kind of agnostic as far as where they are in the meeting. For instance, for today's meeting, I was very interested in item number 4 on the agenda, which is, I assume, a discussion about how to address misconceptions and inaccuracies in anti-forestry petitions as they relate to the partnership. And then there's also a mention down at the very end of the item. It's actually in item number 8 about the Notch Reservoir. It just says Notch Reservoir, and that's something I'm also interested in. So I'm going to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, and then I would have had maybe comments after listening. But since I get to go first, I'll just add that I'm also very interested in how the partnership perceives what you're considering to be misinformation, and I think that the anti-forestry, if that's the way you're terming it, I don't think that you're seeing this the way it should be seen. And that is that you all, well, at least the New England Forestry Foundation was part of the wildlands study that was done, Wildlands in New England. And there's a goal of having a percentage of the landscape protected as forever wild. The federal government has a goal of 30% by 2030. And here in New England, in Massachusetts specifically, we have 2% of our land permanently protected as wild land. And I feel that you're looking at this with a very pejorative perspective, in that you're seeing that as anti-logging, whereas it is pro-forest, pro-wildlands, and it's pro-forestation, which is something that I have raised before this group at numerous meetings. And I think that you're just backing yourself into a corner unnecessarily. And really, I think you need to understand that we have the opportunity to protect lands in the Commonwealth, and some of those lands are not going to be subject to resource extraction and exploitation. They're going to be self-willed. They're going to be wild lands forever. And if you're calling that anti-forestry, I think that says something about the fact that this is appearing to be the Mohawk Trail Woodlands Partnership, the Partnership of Northwest Massachusetts, whatever. You're painting yourself with a brush that is being perceived as you being anti-wilderness. and you being only interested in logging. And I think that that really isn't what this group should be doing. So that's my comment for you. I appreciate you giving me the time to bring that. And I'm very interested in seeing how you address this philosophical concept of anti-forestry, um, whatever the terms you're using or the labeling that you're using to try to denigrate, the protection of wild nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Len.
Looks like Janet has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Some of you remember me. I was on the partnership board for a little while. Well, 3 years actually. So I've been to a lot of meetings related to the partnership a long time ago. One of the things I was thinking about today when you were talking about public comment period and when to have it and all that kind of stuff was I guess I'm just a little bit less of a formal person. I've chaired a couple of boards and stuff like that. And I just wonder, a question I have for you all to consider is, might there be a time when people could actually ask you a question? Because sometimes it just might be a matter of people wanting to ask a question that you could answer to clarify something or something like that, rather than somebody making a statement like now and then waiting till the next board meeting to have their simple question answered. So I guess I would just prefer a little bit less of this like strict formality that I'm hearing from you all. I think that we can all be friends. That's one comment I have. The other one is a comment is I was surprised that I had to actually ask Kate to send me a link to the Zoom meeting today. I guess that's okay, but I don't know why you wouldn't just like have it be part of your announcement, just like other people do. You have a meeting and you post the Zoom there. That's my other comment. And my third comment is, it's just going to be related to your whole meeting today. I agree with a lot of what Glenn is saying. It's a little disturbing to me when people have a different points of view with each other, that people are viewed as misinformed or mistaken or not understanding, when in fact people just have different points of view. I should hope that they're all legitimate, and not, I don't know, it just seems a little judgmental the way your agenda is written. And I have a concern because obviously, a lot of people have been talking to you about the logging job out at in North Adams. And as I see that, the way it's all kind of unfolded and evolved out there, I do feel, I was on the partnership board, I was there. I kind of knew what was, how it was being run. And when people in North Adams what they're saying is, we didn't know that this was happening. And I think that I understand why people think that they should have known that it was happening, but I also understand why people did not know that that project was happening. I don't know what's happening in my town a lot of the time. I have to go look at all the board agendas and stuff to understand what's going on. And so I think that's something that was as important as this, obviously, to people in North Adams, that the partnership, I would just hope that if you're engaging a town the way that you did there a couple years ago, that you would do a much, much better job of letting people know what's going on. And because now you're getting a backlash, because of that. And it also causes me concern, because I live in a partnership town. I live in the same town as Kate, and I guess we have a town forest. And I would want to know immediately if there are plans being made for my town forest, or that the partnership was engaging in my town related to our town forest and what should happen. And so this thing in North Adams is kind of scary to me, the way that it happened. And I really hope that the partnership would, do a better job when you're engaging the town somehow, so that people know what's going on, so that we don't have this kind of obviously it's a shock to people in North Adams. Whether you think it should be a shock to them or not, it is. So that's my comment. So I just, you know, I do appreciate what you're doing. I have been on volunteer boards. I've done this. I know the challenges, but please, figure out a way, I hope, to communicate a lot more clearly with the towns when you're engaging with them. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I just watched the forum that I was not able to be a part of or at the city hall, and it was a pretty one-sided forum. I mean, just like the forest walks were that we took with Gary Goldrup, and there was one point of view coming from Mass Audubon, but there are a lot of people that hold differing points of view, a lot of good scientists, good scholars, good forest workers. Even the Biden administration does not agree with those particular points on forestry. But we were never given a chance to have an open forum where people could actually have an opposing point of view, come in and discuss, hear both points of view, and then have people in the town discuss what they want for their forest, their public forest that they've had, that they live next door to, that has a famous nature trail on that many people use, that it impacts our tourist economy. We never had a public discussion where we could say what we want. And instead, this has just been foisted on us and saying, you need to believe this way about forestry, or, just take a walk. That we actually have to organize our own forum, which we're having on the 27th this week on Friday, where we can voice a different point of view, have videos and speakers from people that have a different point of view, because we weren't allowed to do that. I think it's kind of crazy that the city sponsors one point of view and won't allow anybody else to come in and actually state a point of view, or have an expert come in that has a different point of view. And we called numerous times to get that set up, but that was either just outrightly refused, or nobody got back to us about it. And that would be a much healthier process, because there is a different point of view, and it's a valid point of view. It's not rhetoric. It's not deception. And it needs to be articulated as well to have a really democratic process when it comes to using public forests. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Lori.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, so sorry, Dickon, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, hearing none, that we should close the public comment period for the executive committee meeting on the 24th of
If
September.
somebody joins late through the meeting, we should honor the public comment at the end.
Yes, this time, because we did not have that on the agenda. So they wouldn't know when it was going to be. So I think it's fair that they get a chance. But I do think that when it is announced on the agenda when the public comment period is, then if somebody misses it, they missed it.
Sure.
In this case, it wasn't announced. So I agree.
Okay, so on to the question that public comment was addressing. How do we address misconceptions and inaccuracies in anti-forestry petitions as they pertain to the partnership? So to be clear, this agenda item is not about differing of opinion, but rather just actual factual inaccuracies that kind of swirl around this proposed project. So one of them is that a 10-year management plan, rather than indicating a cycle of stewardship planning, that's kind of the timing of how these things occur, that it means that the forest will be continuously logged for 10 years. That's just not the case. Management plans and stewardship plans happen on a 10-year cycle. Just like a distinction that is not being captured by people. Another one is that demonstration forests, that this is an experiment. There's demonstration forests in this case are demonstrating proven practices for specific identified results. So that's been another public misconception that just keeps getting repeated. Another one is that the woods there are old growth or pristine. And as Hank and Dickon wrote in their op-ed to the Berkshire Eagle this morning, the concept of pristine is problematic in that it erases kind of human land use history, including indigenous management for millennia. Another one is that this idea that the management proposed is somehow dishonest and extractive rather than intending to be protective of the forest's function and ecological integrity. So while we may differ on what a forest, what the best path is to achieve that in the forest, there's basically public rhetoric that this is not the intent of this stewardship plan, which I think is kind of, undermining the trust and the respect that is ironically being asked for at the same time. Another one is that, I don't think it's really arguable that the point that leaving the forest alone in the spots in which management has been identified for, there are hundreds of acres where management has been not identified and where it would theoretically satisfy the desire for wilderness, although I don't want to call it that. There's leaving it alone will not result in a healthier forest for carbon, wildlife, or essential ecological functions. Not within the short term, and by short term, I mean less than 500 or 1,000 years. There's invasives poised to take over the stand. The stand is in decline. So I thought Andrew Randazzo did a really great job of explaining kind of the logic behind the plan. But when it comes to the public reception of that, it just kind of hits a brick wall. And I think that Janet has a good point that the public needs to be involved earlier on. But with this yes. specific example, but also in general, how do we kind of break through that wall and that mistrust so we can communicate what we're actually trying to achieve? Like the Woodlands Partnership is not comprised of commercial logging companies, for instance. And that's something that's being
nor is New England Forestry Foundation, I'll just say.
Thoughts for everyone.
Yeah, I also just wanted to mention one of the some of the information I saw suggested that this project was going to turn Notch Reservoir into suburbia, and that certainly is nowhere within the forest plan or anything that's being proposed for this project. It's city-owned land. A decision in a change in use or something like that would be up to the city and is not anything to do with what has been supported by these grants for 10-year planning and trying to address climate change in the forest. So just to add to that comment.
And I would also go ahead, Art.
Well, Dick, and I'm sorry, I was thinking rather than talking, but my sense is that, our partnership is comprised, it's a large partnership. There's a number of elements, and the people who are participating in the partnership have very different ideas about these very subjects. Some are the same as what have been enunciated, but there are other opinions. And so I think in order to answer the question about how the partnership deals with these issues, I think you kind of have to take them individually and perhaps have an item on the agenda at our meetings to discuss any particular one or a group of opinions and allow for a full discussion by the board and the public. Because I think you'll find that there are differing opinions even on our board about some of the issues that you've just laid out there, Kate.
I think that's a good point, Art. And that the forestry people who study forests, and I think as the climate forest committee pointed out, is that there was no consensus on a number of the issues that they were studying, and I think that we need to acknowledge that there is not a generally accepted one way to address the management of our forests in general, and particularly the management of our forests in the face of climate change. I think one of the things that the Climate Forest Committee did agree on was that the most important thing was to keep forest land in forest, whether it was in early successional forest or old growth or anywhere in between, was not as important as making sure it stayed forest in one of those conditions, or eventually in all of those conditions. So I think that's one of the things that both the Climate Committee and I think the partnership, I think that's something we really all do agree on. But I agree, Art, on the various ways to get there. It is not necessarily agreed that there's one way to do it and everybody agrees that's right. So I think that does bear looking at what questions are being asked and discussing them at our meeting. And I think that Janet is very correct that the process in this particular case could have been better. And I think that we've all learned how important it is to know that you've reached the public before you go too far. And just because you've had announced public meetings is not the same thing as actually having reached the public. And I think there's a lot we can learn about how to do that and do it early. So Janet, I agree. That's a very important point. I think that the terms we use to discuss forestry, I know that the partnership has been accused of some things that are blatantly incorrect, and I think the accusers know that what they said was incorrect, and I don't think that justifies our responding. When it's a legitimate question, I think that it's very important that we take it seriously. But some of the things that have been said are so blatantly not what we do that I don't think that does anyone any service to say things like that. So the question I think that Kate originally asked is, how do we deal with whether you want to call it misinformation or the just inaccuracies in reporting or comments. Does anyone have any suggestions on how we should deal with that?
Well, I think I could talk again. I don't want to command the conversation here, but I think that if we have a challenge like that or something is reported that isn't correct, we should respond by going to the source and saying what the correct information is. But I have to say that one of the strengths of this partnership over the years we've been working together has been that we have access to information that's being studied and that sort of thing. And I can remember several issues where we've had people that are clearly experts in the field or have been studying the question at hand and have come to our meetings and made presentations. And I think the differences among opinions of the partnership members were informed much better after we'd done that. And people have made changes in their understandings and their positions based on that. So one of the things we can do to respond is to bring the differing opinions to the table in the public forum.
Yeah, I have an example of like just kind of, real time. So Janet said that the CFC report is unanimous that the best thing for carbon and biodiversity outcomes is to leave a forest alone. But as North Adams put on their site about this demonstration forest, they put the paragraph that appears after that statement, which doesn't include biodiversity, which complicates that statement. If you respond to everything like that, then you're just kind of getting into like a tit for tat type thing. So that's why I think going back to the public comment question, like maybe having a protocol is the right thing to do, even though it's formal. I don't know.
I think one of the things that we can do is based on public comment is try to kind of following Art's suggestion, have a diverse group of professionals, come to our partnership meetings to do presentations. And I think to Lori's point that they should be a diverse group. It shouldn't just be people who are in favor of forest management that are presenting to the partnership. I think it should include people who have other opinions than that. But the forum for that should be the partnership meetings. And hopefully we can get, a lot of people who are concerned about this issue to maybe make recommendations about how to do this and to come to our meetings. And hopefully we all learn, as a result of that.
Rhonda and Russ both want to speak.
Yes. So let's see who. Yeah. Rhonda.
Thank you so much. Since we're going back just a little bit, I just think it might be in the best interest in the meetings to have at least a few agenda items that we know that the public will want to comment on, and have the public comment afterwards. So that there's like a reaction in real time, and that we can answer questions that after each agenda item that we know will garner public interest. So that's my thoughts about having public comments period. And I think it is best that we try to do our best in answering what we can then, or move to have someone come and answer in the next meeting if we can't do that then. I have other thoughts about how that meeting went, and I think I'll just wait for that. I don't know, Kate, you're nodding your head, but I definitely feel as though there was a lot of Should I keep going?
Yeah.
A lot of
Yes.
misconceptions about why Andre was speaking. Andre Strong Bear Heart Gains from No Loose Braves. Um, he does do some work with the Woodland Partnership and other entities, Mass Audubon as well. But he's not a mouthpiece for any of these entities. In fact, he's very vociferous about his opinions, and they don't always line up with anything that's happening. He has his own mind, he's fully autonomous. And his main point is that Indigenous people have been curating this land, uh, for tens of thousands of years. And that doesn't mean leaving it wild. That absolutely means curating for the best possible outcomes and for the next generations. And there's plenty of stories of planting trees so that, for example, birch trees, so that there can be plenty of birch trees to continue to make birch bark canoes. You're not going to see those in your lifetime or the next two or three generation lifetimes. So you're actually curating for down the road. And when I listened to him speak, he also was saying, why were not Indigenous people invited? How come they were not, their opinions of what is forestry or how a demonstration forest should be curated? That should have happened.
Yes.
Peak and Stockbridge Muncie have an incredible forestry program. They have thousands of acres in Wisconsin. This is their traditional homelands. So it's really disappointing that when Andre, who did not take one side nor the other, was categorized as taking a side. That was really disappointing because so I feel like that we need to have more clarity in conversations and answering questions that come up as really as possible so that we don't have these misunderstandings or mischaracterizations. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Could I?
There's Russ.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've been involved in all these different aspects of advocacy for both landowners and the environment and all this stuff for too many years. I used to have hair, kind of like Dickon used to have brown hair. But one of the things is, and this is one of the great problems today, is that a lot of the people are having a very difficult time going forward. Okay, and what I mean is that the people that are attacking when you talk about attacking forestry, all anybody references is stuff that happened in the 1800s or early 1900s. It's like virtually no one gives credit to the science changing. I mean, things like forest ecology as a science didn't even exist 50 years ago. I mean, we're catching up. Human nature is catching up and everything. So much of it is declaring everybody that if there's money made, there's something wrong with it. But the science, there's so much science going on right now. It's changing and we're learning as we're doing. But there's so much effort having to defend ourselves on stuff that no one that's involved right now in the partnership had anything to do with the condition of the current forest. Probably Dickens the closest to him, and he's got a real nice forest. Okay. But the fact is, there's nobody on the partnership that's old enough to actually have influenced what we're looking at right now. Okay. At the same time, everybody involved in it, all we're doing is getting crap for how we did, somebody behind us did it. So that makes the process. Anyhow, that's where this is really tough, because a lot of this activity has been, defending, going after, and it's not going forward. We're all these things we're learning by doing right now. And we're spending half our time trying to explain something that somebody else. Well, what about this little thing? And if participation is fantastic, but it shouldn't have to be by having to defend the past, because we are trying to be inclusive, I do believe, and we're all trying to go forward. And rather than feeling like people are being shunned or kicked aside, what is your point how can it look at the big thing, at the whole everything? But that is my concern, that there's so much forestry we're fighting with battle here. With this, where if you want to call it a fight, that's what the exaggeration is. We're dealing with stuff that your grandfather would have dealt with back in the early 20s, Dick, and you know what I mean? And that's why we shouldn't have to defend on it.
Well, I mean, I think to that point, when those plantations were planted, was during a time where the concern was we'd already basically converted most of our forest land to pasture land. And we knew that forest products were important to our well-being. And the focus was to reestablish forests on land that had been converted from forest into pasture land. And the way we went about it in that particular area was to have these plantations. The remainder of the area we just left abandoned, and it grew back to what it is now, kind of without our specific but the areas where the plantations are, that was the direct result of our effort to plant crops that we thought would be useful because we needed wood products. And there was no consideration, as Russ pointed out, for the ecological integrity of that stand or its biodiversity or any of the other ecosystem services that forests provide. It was planted to be harvested to supply us with products we needed. That was the goal back then. And in the case of most of the plantations across the state, they were planted and never managed. And that's part of the reason that they're in such decline right now. But the other thing is that climate change is affecting their ability to survive, both climate change and invasives that have been introduced by human beings like us. So those stands are not going to be able to not benefit us in the future, but benefit the forest ecosystem. They're already degraded, and if we don't try to have to restore them, I guess would be one word to use, to restore their ecological integrity, then they're going to be without it. And I guess I'm just reiterating what Russ was saying, but it's that was the thinking at the time, and now we're thinking much differently.
Yep.
Just noting we're almost at 5, so I don't know if we want to continue this discussion for a couple minutes, or if there's any concrete ideas that anyone wants to come out of it, or we keep talking about it for another meeting. But we have had a couple of other forums that happened in the region, but they might be touched on under the updates to come. But
I mean, I think the idea of a dialogue is a great idea. We can further develop that offline and through various committees on how it's appropriate. Yeah, and I think that, I think that makes sense to do if people feel the same. as that?
Well, I think we're going to be talking about this a lot, and that's good. We should be talking about it. So I think we can, it by no means ends the discussion.
Okay, so
Yeah, I guess I would say if people have ideas for how we can support a dialogue, happy to continue that conversation. So feel free to reach out to us with ideas too.
yeah, both this committee and the public, please. And we have the Zoom meeting that way because we've been Zoom bombed a lot. And I've asked, like IT type people, and they say that even putting it on like a PDF thing, it could still be scanned through the internet. So we're trying to figure that out. And I agree it's not ideal, but I'm always available to provide the link at any time during the meeting. Okay, number 5, Dickon, you want to move on?
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah. So if you could introduce that, I would appreciate it.
So we have 2 things. We have a treasurer vacancy on the executive committee. Jeffrey Thomas stepped down from representing Lever back in the summer, and now Andrew Fitch is in this position, but he's on Natural Resource-Based Economic Development Committee, and I don't think he's expressed interest in joining this committee and serving that role. So that's something I think I've asked the full board about, but I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. And then also we have a vacant UMass board seat, Paul Catanzaro, who's been stepping away from many things, not just our board. And the enabling legislation specifies that it be a faculty member from UMass Amherst specializing in ecosystem functions, carbon cycling in terrestrial systems, and climate change as it relates to forests. So that wasn't Paul's official title at UMass, but he clearly filled that role. And Lisa, maybe you can talk about how we met with the Family Forest Research Center, and then we can talk about the vacancies as a whole.
Yeah. So Kate and I had reached out, and well, it was kind of both ways, but Brett Butler, who does the National Woodland Owners Survey for the Forest Service, and he's based at UMass and Amherst. We had a call with him and many of other folks that work supporting that project, different aspects, and doing different research with UMass and the Forest Service. And one of the ideas we had floated was, we need to have a board member who would be a voting member of the partnership board, because alternates can't vote the way the bylaws are set up right now. But we had thought, well, it'd be cool maybe if there could be graduate students or others who are doing different research that could even attend in the UMass board member's stead if the faculty member couldn't come all the time. But we could get updates on research that they're doing, or, areas of interest that intersect with the partnership's mission. So we sort of floated that idea, and I think they are potentially interested in that and are going to get back to us. And then they're also looking at, who else on the faculty might be a good fit for that slot on the board. So am I forgetting anything else from that, Kate, that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so.
Okay. So hopefully we'll get somebody sitting in that seat soon.
So I guess the question is there anyone we should focus on to try to fill the treasurer? Keith Ross was the treasurer before. We could ask him. And is there anyone at UMass who teaching in those categories that we should reach out to? Or do you want us to just work on it and get back to you next time? And you're aware of the situation.
I mean, has it been broadly sent out to the natural resource, the NRC program, and all the other programs at UMass in terms of faculty contact, or is it just by checking with people?
Yeah, I think it comes from the provost or, somebody high up at UMass actually makes the appointment. And so an executive assistant had been in touch with us. They had actually tried to reappoint Paul, but he, declined at this point. He wasn't able to do it. So anyway, we went back to them, said, no, we need to find somebody else. So, and meanwhile, we're like, well, let's check in with Brett and see if we can, get some other suggestions up through the chain. So that's what we're doing. But if anybody knows anyone else or has thoughts, just let us know.
I had
Art,
two
yeah.
thoughts when we talked about this before. Did anybody check with Hank Art to see if he had any suggestions about somebody from Williams College or MCLA or something like that?
We could do that, but I think the legislation actually states the board members, so it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other thought
Good
is
idea, but yeah.
I want to look up rather than down in terms of the hierarchy at UMass. And maybe somebody farther up from faculty that may have an interest. The meetings of the partnership are not so frequent that maybe some of those folks would consider putting in their schedule. I mean, how many times are we meeting a year? 3 or 4 times.
The board meets
times
3 times a year. Yeah.
And I think I'm sure one of the purposes of considering having a UMass representative is because of the abundant research capabilities there, and we wanted to be sure that they felt involved. So, like I say, you might want to ask up rather than down.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Art.
Does anyone else have any suggestions? Okay. The National Heritage Area designation, FERCOG and BRPC came back with a proposal for services that they could provide. And Lisa and I are working with EEA to see how we can get that started. And the services they can provide are a lot of mapping and cultural assessment inventory, but I think it's actually really great that on their end, because we wanted just kind of these statistics and mapping and capturing of historical sites and things like that. They built into their budget they sent back to us that for us to hire or contract with other consultants for Indigenous perspective of the region and a capturing of that for the heritage study. This is only a part of it, not the whole study. So Lisa and I are working on that, and it's getting some process. So I think it's more of an update than a discussion, unless anyone has a comment or a suggestion at this point. Okay, so a couple of committees have some proposed ideas that we're going to put some resources and energy behind. The Natural Resource-Based Economic Development Committee had an idea of integrating locally produced wood products at farmers markets. And this would perhaps be a pilot program working with Woodcraft Collaborative, where we would purchase a booth for the year, which I looked at various farmers markets, and it can be like $500. So that's really a barrier. And it would perhaps be open to like multiple people in the region, not just one person. But we haven't heard back. I reached out to Berkshire Ag Ventures in addition to reaching out to actual farmers markets, which I'm sure their emails are infrequently checked. I think it's a great idea to integrate our locally produced products with farming to kind of lessen that divide. If anyone has any comments or suggestions on that, it'd be welcome. And then I'll just do first, and then you want to go ahead, Dickon?
Well, did you reach out to Roots Rising?
No, just Berkshire Ag Ventures. I can do Roots Rising.
Right, because we're trying to, now I remember.
Yeah.
Roots Rising does the Pittsfield Farmers Market, which is not in the
we don't want to do
area. So
I think it's
but Berkshire Grown, did you reach out to Berkshire Grown?
No, I can. I will.
Because they are, whole county. So they do involve the partnership area.
Okay, I'll do that.
And they have winter markets, and so I definitely would do that, and I think they will respond.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. And then education and outreach and research really wants to push the videography and content creation of the region. So we're thinking of this in a couple different ways. We are going to likely record the event we're hosting with Ethan Tapper on October 11th at Raven News Books, but more of the videography, and we're going to invest in they're pretty inexpensive, a Bluetooth camera that can be clipped to someone's shirt that can pair with your phone, so that we can take like I or anyone on the partnership, can take videos of people in the woods or wherever in the region. And for those of you who have seen Root Hog or Die, that's kind of one little inspiration for this. And I think this could be a really great way to engage the diversity of our community and kind of define what it is, because the community is very unique, even though it's also diverse. So that's going to be happening. And I think the plan is to create some kind of formal way to put out to the partnership board, like suggestions for places, people, topics, and start from there. And then once we have all this kind of mess of filming, oh, thank you, Rhonda. Once we have that filming, we've had some suggestions of people who are really good with editing film. So we could then worry about making something later and have someone else work with that. But just capturing the content, I think, would be really important. So look out for something asking you for your suggestions, and just kind of turn it over in your head, like what you'd like to see. It can be as a list as long or as short as you want it to be. Any other comments on this, on either the committee work or the specifics of it?
I think that's a great idea to have a camera that can be kind of taken out by various people to, just to get film. Yeah, I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah. And I think Rhonda mentioned that she knows someone who would be possibly interested in doing the editing, because I think that's always the biggest challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can learn something from Okateo and No Loose Braids in that they always are involving youth in their projects. And I think Rhonda said that this person is a younger person. So I think that that's an important kind of practice that we can incorporate where it works. I think it's really good to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So much for bringing that up. That is Isaac Larkin Harmon. He's a young adult, and he's got really great skills in editing, and he works for Montague Community Television, MCTV. And he does editing there as well. These graduates from Four Rivers High School really learn a lot about documentary making. So it's a skill set that they have, and he's great at it. So I've used him many times before, and I'd be happy to make that introduction. I think this would be right up his alley. He'd have fun.
Well, thank you, Rhonda, because I think that's exactly what we need.
Okay, want to move on to the agent update? And start, Lisa.
Unmute here. Okay, so first on there was Senator Markey meeting regarding federal designation, and this relates to the idea that we've been exploring of having the partnership seek designation as a national heritage area through the National Park Service program, which, there are these regions all over the country that are highlighting, special landscapes or have certain historical aspects or, different cultural resources that they highlight. And it's just another program that we think might benefit Northwest Massachusetts and the partnership. So we do have funds as part of the agent contract to explore that opportunity. And we did have a good meeting with staff from Senator Markey, just kind of sharing that information. And the idea was, well, what could we just become one of these through federal action, which is probably a long shot, but we're just exploring that idea. And meanwhile, there is a study process that we can go through in order to try to get that same outcome. It might take several years to do that. It would be another series of listening sessions, speaking of which we were talking about earlier, but similar to what we did when we prepared the 10-year partnership plan and met with all the municipalities and had public sessions about that. It would be another similar process, but we will be digging into that whole project in the coming year. So, more to come on that. Then we have a number of other updates here. We did submit a grant in mid-August for one of these many funding opportunities that have become available from the federal government and the Biden administration and the Forest Service. This one was focused on underserved landowners and emerging markets related to climate resilience, I think was how it was billed. We did submit something for that deadline that was focused on trying to reach out to more underserved landowners in the Woodlands Partnership region and hopefully developing some partnerships that we haven't done traditionally. So, for example, reaching out to veterans groups to see if there are landowners, in their audience that we could help support with cost share funding or other programs, opportunities to learn about conservation and sustainable stewardship. So we'll see what happens with that one. We did get good news on a couple of other grants. The Catalyst Fund is a national landscape organization. It's not public, it's a private foundation. But we did get word that something we had submitted early in the summer got funded. It's $25,000, and the goal there is to hire a fundraising or development consultant to help the partnership just identify other funding sources that we should be going for, and really kind of like trying to phase these different proposals over time and have them be really strategic to help propel the mission going forward. So we'll be getting that one up and running as soon as possible and getting the word out to hire somebody for that. So I'm sorry, did somebody speak up there? Or?
I was going to ask who's taking the lead on that hiring.
Well, Kate and I will be working on it, but Kate is going to be the point person. There is an interesting kind of peer networking and learning opportunity that goes with this. So Kate will be attending those meetings of other grant recipients. And where they're being held, Kate? Is that?
I think they're virtual.
For that? Okay, virtual.
Okay. But that's a good point, Art. I think that it should be, there should certainly be board involvement in this process. So what have you guys done in the past? Have you had?
I don't think we've ever had this opportunity before. So
maybe there can be like a working group that could be part of it, or maybe it can go through the executive committee, or maybe whatever. What do you think?
Well, I think we need to get a description out for what we're looking for, which will be based on what was, included in the proposal. And then we can vet that with the executive committee and be sure that we're good to move forward. And hopefully we would have that maybe for the next meeting, because we do want to get this person working as soon as possible for the benefit of the partnership, for the next year. So I'm sorry, go ahead though, Art, if you had other thoughts.
Well, I just wondered, following up on that, whether there's an executive summary or something that you could send out email so that we can see.
Sure.
I assume the grant application itself was fairly lengthy. If Or maybe you can include that whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, we can include the whole thing.
That'd be great. I'd be interested
Yeah.
in seeing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take
Okay,
the
then, yeah, you're gonna talk about the Collins Center, Kate, and then, yeah, okay.
So, as you know, we were awarded an EEA grant for a study of municipal services in the partnership region as it relates to the various stressors on the region, like the diminished tax base with state land and all the other things that make it hard to fund many things in the town. I just saw a newspaper article like 2 days ago that Clarksburg closed their police department down. So this isn't intended to study police, but rather like emergency services. So, and the stress that tourism, as it is now, or if it were to increase, has on towns. So you are familiar with this. So we have a scope of services that has been drafted, and we're working this through the Municipal Financial Sustainability Committee meeting. And we're having our first meeting on October 8th. That's a committee meeting with the Collins Center invited to go over this draft scope of services. So as well as sending out the Catalyst grant, I can send out that scope to you all, and you're all invited to come on the 8th or to provide any comments between now and then. The scope is kind of been narrowed. I had pretty grand ideas when I was writing the grant, like, oh, we can tie this with wordplay to ecosystem services, and we can make a point for how we value things and how it's, but alas, that wasn't very focused. So I welcome your input, and I'll send that with the catalyst as well.
Does that mean that when is that on the 8th? We got a finance committee meeting on the 8th, Woodlands Partnership Finance Committee, I think, from 4 to 5.
There's an municipal financial sustainability committee meeting.
Yeah.
From 4 to 5. That's it.
Oh, that's what you're talking about?
Yeah. So yeah, that committee is kind of leading this grant because it first off, the idea for the grant originated in the committee with Liz Kidder from Leiden, who's worked with the Collins Center. But it also speaks really to their mission of strained municipalities. But obviously everyone is welcome to this conversation, and also I will send out the scope of services probably to not only the executive committee but the full board for their input before the 8th.
Great. I'm glad to know I'm only making conflict between one meeting in my calendar.
So we talked a little bit about Notch, and the recording is a great thing to watch. And if you haven't recommended it, and if you haven't watched it and you weren't there in person, recommend watching it. And Lisa, you probably wanted to talk about this mainly since you presented there.
Not too many updates here, really. We did attend this public forum that the city hosted on September 12th. I spoke at the beginning just with a little background about what we meant by, demonstration force, which has been a goal of the Woodlands Partnership for many years. And basically, we had grant funding from the state that was available to fund two climate forest stewardship plans for two different town-owned forests. So one of them ended up being in North Adams at Notch Reservoir. And so that's, kind of where the project started. There was an opportunity for neighbors and residents to ask more questions. And so Mass Audubon was there to address some of the specifics, along with the forester that's working with the city about the logistics of what's being proposed, et cetera. And a cutting plan still needs to happen, is my understanding. And there's another CONSCOM commission, I think, meeting coming up. So there are additional opportunities for people to comment and, make their concerns known. And then we did have Dickon and Hank co-authored an opinion piece that did appear in the Berkshire Eagle today, kind of just, offering some other viewpoints about why this work was important. So I think Kate has a link for that she can send out as well, which we will share with the board. That's all I have on that. And I don't know if you want to add anything else. Kate or Dickon, you were both there, so.
Did you want to say anything, Dickon?
Yeah, I think that the meeting actually went pretty well in terms of that. Both Lisa's presentation I thought was very good, and I thought also that Andrew's was very good. I felt like the concerned citizens had a good opportunity to express themselves. And I think that the city is not yet sort of done with trying to respond to the community. Maybe I'm speaking a little bit out of school, but I did hear it said that the mayor wanted to have this meeting first, and then based on that, move forward with more engagement with the public. So I don't think this is intended or will be sort of the last word. It was just an opportunity for both NAP and Mass Audubon to sort of explain how this came about. And I do think there's probably going to be more interaction with the city and the public. I don't think this is, an over and done with thing. But I do feel like everyone expressed themselves well, and I thought both the public and sort of the people representing the project were polite and spoke well.
Okay, so upcoming and recent events. Last Saturday, we had a woods walk in Savoy, in the Savoy State Forest. It was really great. A lot of people from Savoy came out because we really made sure that we had targeted outreach to people in the very small community there. And I think this is an example of involving public way early on, because what the walk focused on is two parcels. One where there's management proposed that hasn't even been designed yet, and then one where management occurred 6 years ago or so. And this was led by DCR, who is working with other partners on a landscape scale restoration grant. And it was really great because there was one public concern about hunting out there, of people shooting across the road and stuff, and how this might change patterns of hunting use was able to be addressed before there's even any map drawn of where any activities might occur. So it was really positive. There were a lot of people there that from the community, like I said, but also we met Conrad Crawford from DFG, and he is the environmental justice liaison, and he was great. And I hope that we can kind of work with him and his initiative more closely. So yeah, it was a great time. We want to do more of them. So if you have ideas for woods walks, please reach out. And then upcoming on October 11th at 7 o'clock, we have a reading with Ethan Tapper, Vermont forester and recent author of How to Love a Forest at Raven Youth Books in Shelburne Falls. Really excited about that one. And then brewing in the percolator and almost about to be announced is a book club that Rhonda Anderson graciously offered to host, reading the book Becoming Kin. And I think there will be maybe like, there it is. There it is with all your stickies. So, I think that more on that soon, but I'm really excited about that. And it won't be like late October that it would start. Venue search for November board meeting. We were throwing out the date of November 18th, which is a Monday. So we obviously want to make sure that a lot of you will be here, will be able to attend that. So you can either answer that now or by email later. And as for venue, I contacted Art and I'm like, what do you think about the Heath Community Hall?
Yeah.
It kind of be nice to just go to different towns in the region. Heath is pretty central. It's kind of like a low-key fall meeting like we had last year. Does anyone have any feelings on any of that?
I think we'd be glad to have it in Heath. It's only 3 miles off of Route 2. I don't know how central that is, but
It's pretty central.
not that hard to find.
I think it'd be great to go up the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, it should be okay. We shouldn't have too much snow by that time.
It's already really cold, like 40s. And then, so, updating the 10-year plan on an annual basis and as our priorities not necessarily shift, but like expand and reorient themselves within that shifting. I think it's really important to not lose sight of that. So I was wondering like how best to address it, because Lisa and I will mention at various committee meetings and board meetings, and don't forget that if you have any ideas to send us, but it's not really formalized. So I was wondering if this is something that you'd want to address like an entire executive committee meeting around, or if you wanted to have like just a separate small working group or any other formal way to submit thoughts, like even if it's just a form that's available to board members, or any thoughts on that?
I would just kind of like to introduce the thought that I don't think we have done enough to justify an update. I think that time would be better spent focusing on getting stuff done than updating a plan that very little has actually been done except for having a lot of meetings. I don't want to sound cynical, but I do think that coming up with more reasons to have meetings is not productive at this point. I think our meetings should be focused on accomplishing more, and I think we're beginning to do that. I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just saying that that I don't think we really need to do a 10-year plan update yet. I would love to be able to say I think we really need to do one because so much has changed, but I don't think we're there yet.
Again, I think you're overthinking this. So as discussed in this meeting, there was the idea of how can we better facilitate dialogue in the broader region around forest management and kind of bridge that divide. That is not explicitly spelled out as a subcategory of our larger goal, so it clearly fits within it. So I think that maybe this is something that falls to the agent instead of having it being another meeting, because I think what we've discussed in a lot of meetings, if you look back at the minutes, already kind of form distinct narrative that might not plug right into the plan that we have already. So I think it's valuable to kind of capture that, and it doesn't have to go within the plan. It can just be like addendums, like just like a 1-2 page addendum for each year.
Okay. I mean,
yeah, I like the idea of sort of an action item addendum that, because ideas come up in all the different committee meetings. And you can only actually realize so many of them, but having them prioritized is really helpful. So yeah, I kind of like that idea.
And that's not like doing a plan at all, you know?
Yeah, well, if it doesn't distract us from other things, but I kind of thought that that was part of what the educational outreach committee's goals were already. But
I think the legislation says we will annually update the plan or at least review it and think about, is anything missing or like, do we need to do something about this basically? So we can do that in whatever form you all think is best.
I don't think that our plan captures the work we've done with building relationships with Indigenous peoples at all. I think it mentions Indigenous people, but it doesn't capture the trajectory that the partnership has taken with inviting Okateo, with changing our name, with all of the partnerships we've had on grants. So I think there is a lot of growth that I think we just don't see because we're in it. So I think just like a simple addendum, I can work on that and maybe have it to share for the next executive committee meeting for just kind of review. I don't think it would be too much of a distraction.
Okay. I have a question about the plan to have an event similar to the discussion that I think both Kate and Lisa attended about Indigenous rights and how are we moving ahead with that?
So I have an email drafted to send to Pam Ellis to reach out and invite her if she would be interested in participating in a forum like that with the partnership. And I know she has a very busy season at the end of the summer, so I'd kind of held off doing that. But I think she might be at the rally event coming up this week, so I was also hoping to maybe speak with her there. And then meanwhile, Kate had an idea. Well, there's this big canopy event. Maybe that would be another good place for her to address folks. So we're looking into that as another possibility, but others are, at the state level are involved in organizing that event. So, but anyway, I will be sending that invitation out hopefully tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
busy,
I think that she should be the keynote speaker of Canopy, because if you think about the people in that room at Canopy, it's all of the policymakers, all the people involved in like land stewardship and all this stuff. So the effect of learning about Aboriginal rights and the presentation that she gave at the Massachusetts Land Trust Coalition conference last year would just be incredible. But if that can't happen, and I really would only want it to be if she could be the keynote personally. I think the partnership would then be designing their own like well-publicized, well-funded event that we'd have to figure that out. But the benefit of trying to get it in Canopy is that the people are there already. The people who need to hear it are there. So it's kind of...
I'm not sure that that's true, because I think to a large degree, the people that need to hear that are the Indigenous people in the area. And I don't think they will be at the Canopy event.
What do you think, Rhonda? What is the audience considerations here?
Well, I think it's definitely a fabulous thing to be asking the individuals, the organizations, and tribal nations that are doing this work to extend the invitation for them to be there. So I think absolutely there could be a pretty, depending on the timing, a pretty strong showing. So yeah, I think it's important. We all need to start bridging, making these bridges. So,
Rhonda, are you thinking a strong showing at the Canopy event or a strong showing at an event that the partnership would put on?
Either way, we just have to put out the invitation and, have an agenda that everyone can agree to. And, Pam Ellis is amazing. Keisha Lawrence DeFries is also a pretty incredible person. Kim Toney is also amazing. So I would recommend any one of those three, of course, Pam being right on top. So.
Well, we'll
Well,
work on that.
yeah, I think that's great that you've got something ready to go, Lisa. And hopefully these various forms of communication will bear fruit.
I just, I just want to mention, just getting back to the updating the 10-year plan. I think maybe we should think about doing like a annual report that really can reference, like maybe ask the board to actually review the 10-year plan, and then, you know, really do an annual report of what we have accomplished, and we could be referencing the plan as, you know, we said we were going to do this, and look, we did this. And so, you know, I'm always shocked at when we do our annual report at the Franklin Land Trust, like a year back is a long time. And what did we do that we said we were going to do? What was in our strategic conservation plan or our organizational plan? You know, whether it's grants that we got, how many outreach events we did, you know, whatever it is that, you know, support that we gave organizations and towns and landowners. So I think that might be a way to, it's not quite updating a 10-year plan that we literally just finished, but expanding, you know, saying what it is we did, you know, because we planned to do this and we did this. And I think then the indigenous activities that were, you know, that weren't more concretely described in our plan can then, you know, we can be talking about that, you know, what we've been doing. So just a thought.
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
Yeah. So, are people available on Monday, October 21st? Is that the date that we were going to throw out, Lisa? So, Lisa and I would like to meet with you all again before the November full board meeting. And there's a lot to follow up on based on the conversation today as well. So are people available that Monday, the 21st? If you can't answer now.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I can follow up online if you want to do it offline as well. Okay.
I think I am.
Okay. I'll follow up online just to make sure, but
I think I should be too.
do people prefer a specific, like, is the 4 to 5:30 time frame good for people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I jumped ahead, so if people were still talking, I just wanted to get that out. Any items not anticipated, Dickon, or?
Yes. And at the Savoy Woods Walk, I got into a discussion afterwards with Kevin, who is the forester, the DCR forester, who's presented the Woods Walk. And the subject of more events came up. And then the subject of having an event focused on food forests came up. And Russ, I hope you would be interested in this. But it turns out Kevin is very interested in this. And he's got a whole program already that he wants to be able to do, but he hasn't been able to get DCR to move ahead with it. And I thought, well, maybe we could kind of collaborate between Kevin and the partnership and DCR to try to get this program started. And
I think that would be really neat. I'm getting more and more insights into what it's going to take to get going forward on this this whole thing. And yeah.
And one of the things that Kevin is very focused on is the indigenous history. I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to express it as well as I wish I could, but
well, we have
that
the equity and conservation grant is already dealing with food. Is Food Forest being funded through that, Rhonda? Or sorry, Dickon, sorry to interrupt you.
But that I think the point I was trying to make is that this is a possible opportunity to, again, sort of engage with the indigenous community.
Absolutely. I've given it a tremendous amount
That's
of thought.
also,
I had some ideas, and I look forward to that chance, Dick, and I really do.
well, I will try to get you and Kevin linked up.
Okay, that sounds good.
Rhonda has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
especially for bringing up that topic. I know Ocotillo Cultural Center had been putting together a demonstration food forest using silviculture, essentially, and identifying not only foods but medicinals, and
Right. Yeah.
working with to report back on the USDA what any of the barriers are for Indigenous youth and finding potential futures within forestry or ethnobotany. And so, holding classes. So some of that has shifted. That's going to be probably in the next few weeks will be shifted in some way, form, or another. But myself and the doctor that I hired to create an ethnobotany plan for our workshops, Dr. Jess Dolan, we came up with a very full program for our demonstration food forest. Whether or not it's actually going to be held, that site will be in Ashfield. It won't be. It most likely will be at the Nipmuc Farm School, Pequog Farm. Or in Millis on Nipmuc held land, or both. So this is where we haven't the details are a bit murky still, but we do have a pretty well fleshed out plan. So I'd be happy to share that and bring Jess in. I know that this was a lot of her hard work as well. So I want to make sure that she's got credit where credit is due. And if there's any possibility for partnering, that would be great. I'd love to do that. And when I did the keynote speech for DCR, I also made sure that everyone had one of these books for their leadership, their last meeting in May for their leadership meeting. Go ahead, Art.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Rana. I have another obligation at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to have to leave the meeting. But is there, Dickon, is there more, or Kate, is there more on the agenda?
We're pretty much done, I think.
I think all I would add is that I think there's a real opportunity to get DCR involved in this as well. And I think we may, as the partnership, be able to help facilitate what Rhonda is already working on, but expand it to where DCR is involved, and maybe DCR land is involved, and that would just all be a start on something that hopefully would really engage private forest landowners as well as the indigenous community in a very broad way.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great idea. I'm all for it. I'm here for this. This gives me joy.
I think Art is itching to make a motion.
Oh, well, if it's requested, I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good to see everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Aye.
And thank all of you for taking the time to continue to work on this.